If you're anything like I am, then you probably love snakes, lizards, and all things scaly. And in this series, we're travelling all around Australia to find some of your favourite reptile species in the wild. We're going on epic adventures to explore Australia's wildest corners, and if you love reptiles as much as I do, you're in for a treat. In our last video, we travelled up the east coast of Australia, all the way to the famous Australia Zoo, home of the legendary Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. Along the way, we encountered frogs, toads, lizards, and plenty of snakes. And if you haven't already seen part 1, be sure to check it out before jumping into this one, because there's so much stuff that you don't want to miss. But now, it's time for part 2 of our herping journey, so let's dive right into the wild once again, where we'll be climbing massive hills, exploring snake-filled parks, and cruising down the road in search of all things scaly. Our East Coast adventure had to come to an end at some point, but don't worry, we weren't done yet. We powered through and drove an impressive 11 hours straight back to our base in Sydney. When you think of Sydney, the first thing that might come to mind is the iconic Harbour Bridge or the stunning Opera House. But what you might not know is that Sydney isn't all concrete and skyscrapers. There's a whole other side to Sydney, filled with lush national parks, gorgeous bushland, and wildlife that you wouldn't expect to find so close to the city. And we were lucky enough to explore it all. On the days we weren't travelling or exploring other parts of Australia, we decided to do some herping right in Sydney in Ku-ring-gai National Park. This park is just a short 15-minute drive from one of our bases, and it's a fantastic place for spotting wildlife. On our first day herping in Sydney, we set out in the middle of the day for a hike. Big mistake though, it was scorching hot and we were dripping with sweats just minutes into the walk. The temperatures were brutal, but that didn't stop us. We made our way through the park and we spotted tons of small skinks. These little guys were darting across the path and they were absolutely adorable. One species we encountered was the eastern water skink. The eastern water skink is a semi-aquatic species found in eastern Australia, particularly near rivers, lakes, and ponds. They're often seen basking in the sun near the water's edge, soaking up the heat to regulate their body temperature. These skinks have sleek, shiny scales that give them a metallic look when the sunlight hits them just right. Now, what makes a skink a skink? Skinks are a type of lizard, but what sets them apart from other lizards is their elongated body and short legs. Some species have lost their legs entirely, which gives them a snake-like appearance. One of the most interesting things about skinks is their ability to shed and regenerate their tail. If a predator grabs them by the tail, they can escape and grow a new one. After seeing all those skinks, we made our way to a creek, hoping to spot something even more impressive: the lace monitor. Lace monitors are one of the largest lizards in Australia, and they are absolutely stunning to see in the wild. We scoured the area, searching high and low for this elusive creature, but the heat was just unbearable. So we decided to make our way back up the hill and finish the hike. Just as we were about to reach the car park at about 4 p.m, we spotted something move in the distance. It was a lace monitor, and a huge one in fact, sitting right in front of us on the path. We couldn't believe our luck. Lace monitors, also known as tree goannas, are one of Australia's largest and most impressive lizards. They can grow up to 2 meters long, and they use their long, sharp claws for climbing trees and catching prey. These monitors are mostly arboreal, meaning they spend a lot of the time in the trees. And they're also excellent swimmers, which means they can navigate both land and water very well. After filming the lace monitor, we headed back to our house, but the adventure didn't end there. As the night fell, we set out herping for our next adventure, and this time we'd be cruising the roads. If you've watched other herping videos, you might think that every moment is action-packed, but the reality is that herping often involves a lot of driving, and sometimes it can be hours before you find anything. You see, herping isn't always as glamorous as it looks. There are long stretches where you don't find anything. Sometimes you can drive around for 3 or 4 hours and see nothing at all, but that's what makes it so exhilarating. When you do find something, it's all worth it, and tonight we were determined to find a goal animal. After driving for about 2 hours with no luck, we were starting to feel discouraged. Just as we were about to call it a night though, we spotted something in the distance. A familiar sight. Other herpers with their snake hooks and their head torches. We pulled over and discovered that they had found a red death adder. Death adders are fascinating creatures. Despite their fearsome name, they are actually quite shy. They are ambush predators using their camouflage to blend into their surroundings and wait for prey to come close. Their bite is incredibly venomous. In fact, they are the 5th most venomous snake in the world, but they will only strike if they feel threatened. After a great chat with the other herping group and getting some fantastic footage of the red death adder, we continued our drive. Unfortunately, the rest of our night was uneventful, but the next day we had a lot more success. Our next herping adventure took an interesting turn. As we were driving, we spotted some tiny little meatball-shaped mice darting across the road. These little guys were fast and seemed to be everywhere, and as we continued our drive, we noticed a couple of possums climbing trees and foraging in the bushes. They're nocturnal marsupials that are great climbers. They can be found all over Australia, from urban areas to the deep bush. They're omnivores, eating everything from fruits and flowers to insects and small animals. In fact, possums can be pretty mischievous, often raiding bins and foraging for food in city areas. And of course, we can't forget about Australia's infamous spiders. We saw plenty of orb weaver spiders spinning their impressive webs. These spiders are harmless to humans, but they play an important role in controlling insect population. It was also pretty cool to watch one of them catch a meal. Australia is home to some of the most venomous spiders in the world, like the Sydney funnel web and the redback. While these spiders can be dangerous, they usually aren't aggressive and will only bite if provoked. If you encounter one, it's best to give them plenty of space and avoid disturbing their webs. Still, it's amazing how these spiders have adapted to thrive in Australia's diverse environments. We wrapped up the night with another incredible find, a larger grey-coloured death adder. Look at those gorgeous patterns. The way they blend into the landscape is just amazing. These snakes are so well camouflaged and they rely on that for stealth when they hunt their prey. After a few more adventures, we headed to Wombara, a beautiful coastal town, to spend a few nights there. We visited some waterfalls at sunset, hoping to find a diamond python, but no luck. However, we did find a marsh frog, and that was a delightful surprise. The next morning, I realized that Wombara was absolutely overran with water dragons. These lizards were everywhere, and I didn't even need to leave the house. I looked out my bedroom window and there was one sat right by the pool. Water dragons are incredible creatures. They are known for their ability to swim and dive, and they're often found near bodies of water. These guys are opportunistic feeders, munching on insects, small reptiles, and plants. They're also skilled climbers and are often seen perched on rocks and basking in the sun. And if that wasn't enough, I had the most magical moment at the beach. I was standing by the shore when two dolphins appeared out of nowhere. They spent the next 15 minutes playing with the surfers. It was absolutely mesmerizing. After soaking in that beautiful sight, we headed back to Sydney to prepare for our outback trip. But that, my friends, will have to wait for another video, so make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. But before we finish up with this video, I have to tell you all about our last herping day in Sydney. Not only did we find a goal animal, but we also saw a wallaby and a bandicoot. Bandicoots are small nocturnal marsupials. They have a reputation for being incredibly fast, darting through the underbrush as they forage for food. They are ground-dwelling animals that dig for insects, worms, and seeds. While often elusive, seeing one in the wild is such a treat. And now, for the most bizarre find of the trip, we spotted what we thought was a brown snake. But upon closer inspection, we realized it wasn't a snake at all. It was a common scalyfoot, a legless lizard that mimics the appearance of a snake. Common scalyfoots are fascinating creatures. They have tough, armored scales that help protect them from predators. They're often mistaken for snakes, but they are actually lizards, and they have these tiny flaps on their body, which is where they get the name scalyfoot. We were so lucky to see one of these guys, and in fact, he would not leave us alone. We saw him 3 times on one circuit, the same lizard, and he was really enjoying the warmth from the tarmac of the road. But that wraps up today's adventure. Stay tuned for even more. Next up, we'll be exploring Australian expos and finding some well-loved lizards in their natural habitats. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on the next reptile-filled adventure. I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.